life unfolding in this present moment. And there's an enormous amount to be gained from sharing this kind of heart space together, online, in cyberspace, so to speak, as we continue to maintain this social distancing, being in some sense alone, but also together as we continue to maintain this social distancing, as we comply with the invitation to really take care of each other by keeping to ourselves in our own small networks, so that we can bring this highly contagious infection, viral infection, under some degree of control and put it in the rearview mirror. And of course, we know that this is disrupting our lives to an enormous extent everywhere. And I really want to honor that, in a sense, the community that's forming here and many, many other communities where people are seeking out meditation teachers, Dharma teachers, communities, musicians, artists, teachers, elementary school teachers, children, and finding ways to actually really be together and take refuge together in our deep interconnectivity. And the formal meditation practice, the formal cultivation of mindfulness or awareness, if you will, open-hearted, spacious presencing, is in some sense a radical act of affirmation that we are together and that we do not end at the boundary of our skin. And so when we take our seats, so to speak, both literally and metaphorically, we're actually engaging something that recognizes our profound interconnectedness and how much larger we are than our own personal narratives and our own fear when those personal narratives collapse, as many of them have in the past few days and weeks, because no one was expecting something of this order of magnitude to disrupt the entire globe and to threaten us with the kinds of illness and death that we are now facing collectively as a species. And so this is, in fact, a radical act of sanity for us to gather in this way and to be together. And I want you to know that although I can't see 1,000 or 10,000 people on my screen or whatever the number is, I feel that I can feel you. I know that you are present, and I know that we will continue to work together, not just through this week, but perhaps in different ways or in the same way, in ongoing on the calendar until this is really behind us. And I'm prepared to do that because I feel like I'm part of a much larger whole of all of us collectively learning how to adjust to these circumstances, and then learning what the true lessons are that we might learn here as a species and as nations and as citizens, so that we don't make foolhardy mistakes going forward that actually put us at much higher risk for this kind of thing happening again, and perhaps happening in much worse ways. And I also want to recognize that it may be that the people who most need to be on this program or on this call or whatever we want to call it, don't have the resources to do that. Whether it's time or whether they're out there on the front lines being first responders in one way or another, or supporting the people who are and bringing us our food, and also people who may not have food or shelter or the resources to even have a computer or nevertheless have internet access. So if we're on this call together, it really means that in some sense we have the luxury and the privilege of taking this time to actually drop in and fine tune the instrument of our own attention, of our own awareness, of our own being, and in that way respond rather than react to the insane levels of stress and disruption and pain, both emotional and physical, especially if we get sick, and concern that for others that we're experiencing at this moment globally, in some places more than others. So let's a few moments now and simply let go of everything that's come before. No matter what's boiling in our minds and our hearts, we're not pushing anything away. We're putting out the welcome mat for what's ever here. But we're going to actually learn to drop in on a dimension of our lives that's always here and that we very often just simply don't acclimatize to or befriend or pay enough attention to. And that is our capacity to just be with whatever arises in awareness and hold it in awareness without pushing it away, without pursuing it, without getting so caught up in it, whether it's a highly turbulent thought stream, emotional storms that accompany the thought stream, or anything else that arises in our experience. So let's see if we can simply tune into the fact that we're sitting here, seeing if we can sit or lie or whatever position you're in a posture that embodies wakefulness, intentionality, deep interconnectedness, and awareness. And bring our awareness to the fact that, amazingly enough, without our having to do anything about it at the moment, unless you are in a florid case of COVID-19, we are breathing. And that the breath is taking care of itself. We are not on a respirator right now, although many, many people are and have to be in order to get through this and continue to live. So something that we so much take for granted, namely the fact that we're being breathed, so to speak, where the breath is taking care of itself. We can bring into our awareness, and we can simply ride on the waves of our own in-breath and out-breath and all of the sensations associated with it in the body, moment by moment by moment as we sit here. Everything else that's going on, all the stress, all the fear, all the pain, all the loss is equally present, but we're just inviting our awareness of the breath sensations in the body as we sit here to take center stage in the field of awareness, and everything else for now, not pushing anything away, but also not pursuing it, and simply letting it be in the wings for now. And so this is, in some sense, a new place to take refuge, a new place to reside that's always been here, and that we can avail ourselves of. Whether we've been meditating for years and decades, or whether we're brand new to the practice, this cultivation. It's not about getting someplace else or having some special feeling. It's about being exactly where you are, as you are, and simply embracing it in this new, old dimension of awareness, the capacity we've had all along, but which requires a certain kind of cultivation to learn how to inhabit our own awareness. And so simply riding on the waves of this breath coming in and riding on the waves of this breath leaving the body. Eyes open is fine if you want to gaze at the screen or gaze beyond the screen. Eyes closed is also fine. Whatever you feel most comfortable with. And just taking up residency here with the full duration of this breath coming in. Feeling it. Experiencing the pause and the reversal. The full duration of this breath leaving the body. Feeling it. The pause at the nadir And then the new in-breath coming all on its own, a new beginning, life renewing itself. And we don't have to work to make this happen. So not pushing the breath, not pulling the breath, but simply feeling the breath, befriending the universe of sensations in the body associated with this miraculous capacity that is so much at risk for so many when they get a very serious case of this virus. And so in that sense, sitting as if your life depended on this moment and this breath, which of course it does, in more ways than we think, and in more ways than we usually can think. And cultivating, if you can, a certain amount of just ease, because the breath is simply doing itself. So you have nothing to do other than to ride on the wave with full awareness. Moment by moment by moment. And breath by breath by breath as we sit here, lie here, whatever. So seeing if right in this moment, there isn't a certain quality of refuge, of actually being out of the storm, out of the ferocity of the winds and the turbulence of what we're experiencing. And for just this timeless moment, with just this in-breath or this out-breath, and an awareness of the body sitting here breathing, there's not a sense of calm, of relative calm. Of remembering and realizing that for now you're okay. You're whole. Whatever you have to be dealing with in this particular time in your own life and circumstances. Can you recognize this quality of wholeness, of completeness, of being fundamentally okay right in this moment? And again, letting everything else, the challenges, whatever they are, and they are huge, and there are many, simply for now be in the wings. And so there's just this breath, this moment, this body sitting here in relative stillness, and the dignity of having made the choice to attend in this way. And whether you've been meditating for 100 years or you're brand new to the practice, it turns out that the mind, even when it's not stressed, the way all our minds are stressed nowadays, the mind definitely has a life of its own. And just because you've asked it to ride or surf on the waves of sensation of the breath, doesn't mean that it's going to stay put. It is very labeled, and it will go here and there, visiting the past and the future, and just get carried away in the thought stream and in emotional reactivity. And that is important to remember, that that is part of the curriculum. It's not like you're a bad meditator or you're doing something wrong. This is just the human mind. And it's not like what we're really concerned with is the breath. Important as the breath is, what we're really cultivating is our capacity for awareness itself. So it's the attending that's important, not the objects of attention, like the breath sensations. So every time you notice that your mind is off someplace else and you've forgotten about the breath in your body, that's a moment of mindfulness too, because you've realized that you're thinking, or you're caught up in emotion, or whatever it is. That awareness is the same awareness as the awareness of the breath sensations you were just with the moment before. So it doesn't even mean that you have to come back to the breath, because it's the awareness that's most important. So, but if you're brand new to this practice, it's very, very helpful to actually notice what's on your mind when it's no longer, when the breath sensations are no longer so predominant or at all in evidence. Just noticing what's on your mind and the emotional charge and how it feels in your body right in this moment, as contraction, as anger, as tension, as fear. And then simply letting it be here and coming back to the breath sensations, because your body's still breathing. No matter how frightened or contracted the mind gets, body's still breathing, and we can actually retune to it without pushing away our fear, our anxiety, our concerns, our interest in the future and in the past. And for now, only for now, we come back. We recognize what's on our minds, and we simply let it be and come back to the breath as a fundamental part of our somatic experience sitting here. And if the mind wanders 100,000 times in a few minutes, well, that's part of the curriculum too. That's just the nature of the mind to wave, just like it's in the nature of the ocean to wave, depending on atmospheric conditions and storms. And so the mind can be very turbulent at the surface, but just like the ocean, drop down 20 or 30 feet. And even in a tempest or a hurricane, there's simply gentle undulations. And so it is that refuge that we can not pursue, but actually drop in on, because it's always here for us. And it doesn't deny the turbulence, doesn't deny or push away anything at all. And so over and over and over again, as a kind of love affair, with what might be possible, we encourage ourselves to come back to the primary object that we've selected for ourselves. In this case, it happens to be the sense of the body as a whole, sitting and breathing, but it could be anything. And over again, we recognize what is on our minds when it's caught up in something else and we've forgotten about the breath. And we come back lovingly, but at the same time, firmly. We're undergoing a certain kind of training of the mind, exercising, if you will, the muscle of mindfulness. The more we work with whatever turbulence and resistance or impatience or whatever it is, boredom that arises, those are all just waves on the surface of the ocean of the mind. None of it's a problem, because we can simply drop back into awareness and rest in a certain kind of stability, clarity, calmness, spaciousness of mind and heart that allows us to deal with whatever we're facing in imaginative, creative, and wholesome new ways. Moment by moment by moment. When we invite, if you will, the entirety of the day to become our meditation practice. But for now, just this moment, just this breath. Over and over, each in-breath is a new beginning and a gift, because we know why. We're not taking any in-breath for granted anymore. And so we really can shelter in place by being fully embodied, because this is the place we occupy. We can take shelter from the storm, or refuge from the outer storms, and also sometimes the most damaging are the inner storms, our reactions when we have a sense of losing control or falling into fear of what might be, or grief and sadness and anger around what is. All of which is perfectly natural, but none of which is all that helpful in this particular moment. We're training ourselves, so to speak, to not lose our minds when we most need them, to not lose our hearts when we most need them, and our loved ones and everybody on the planet most needs us to be our best selves. And this really is a love affair with sanity. And with the full dimensionality of what it really means to be you, to be human. When your deepest nature, what people love in you the most, radiates out and illuminates your domain and the domain of the world. And it's all happening right here and right now, and in every moment of your life, meditating, not meditating, as long as you're willing to be awake and aware. Just like this. Just this moment. Just this breath. just this sitting here, just this being human. Just this. Just this. Now, shortly, I'll ring some bells to signal the formal end, if you will, of the meditation practice. And I'll have a lot more to say about what that means and what it doesn't mean in a few moments. But for now, seeing if you can expand the field of your awareness around the body and around your breath to include the entirety of your experience as a human being, your thoughts, your emotions, sounds aside from or underneath my voice, sights if your eyes are open, the full repertoire of your senses wide open, and resting in an awareness that really is boundless and that doesn't end at the envelope of your skin. And in particular, since we're all on a line together, seeing if you can feel like you're whole in and of yourself at this particular moment, and also part of a much wider circle of wholeness of human beings who have tuned in today to this period of being together with the intention to cultivate mindfulness and to listen very deeply to each other. And I don't even have a number of how many people are tuning in right at this moment, but I know it's over 1,000 because that's when everybody migrates to YouTube. But seeing if you can actually, if your eyes are open and seeing thumbnails of people on the screen or just with your heart open, feeling how, while we're whole in and of ourselves and part of the wholeness of our families and networks of friends, we're also part of a much larger web of interconnectedness and wholes, extending out to include all human beings on the planet. All of us capable of enormous suffering. Many people at the moment experiencing enormous suffering And all of us also capable of enormous wakefulness, enormous compassion, enormous wisdom when we align with what's deepest and best in ourselves. That perhaps we forget when we get too frightened or we get too busy or we get to whatever it is, and simply forget that we're far, far bigger than our fear and our small narratives about who we are, no matter how self-inflationary they are, or no matter how derogatory or sort of damaging they might be, when we don't recognize our own beauty and our own wholeness. And for now, just letting go of that and experiencing your wholeness and your beauty right in this moment. We like to say to people coming into an MBSR program that, and those people for the past 40 years have been coming with every conceivable medical diagnosis and chronic problem, medical problem with stress, pain, and illness under the sun. And we say to them that as long as you're breathing, from our perspective, there's more right with you than wrong with you, no matter what's wrong with you. And we're going to pour energy into what's right with you in the form of attention and awareness and compassion and open-hearted acknowledgement. And let the rest of the healthcare system take care of what's wrong. We're talking about chronic disease now, not acute infection. And see what happens. And what has happened over the past 40 years is that hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of people have found that they can play a major role in their own health and well-being going forward over the lifespan. And this is a great adventure. So meditation is not one more thing you have to do and takes time in your busy day. The real meditation is how you live your life, how we live our lives from moment to moment. So if mindfulness is only, effective on the meditation cushion, forget about it. That's really like tuning the instrument so that you can contribute to the orchestra of all of us contributing to this one world we inhabit. So as you hear the sound of the bells, I'd like to invite you to slowly open your eyes if they've been closed, and to expand your awareness so that there is, in fact, a sense of us all being here together, and that the real meditation practice is life itself. So although I rang bells, it doesn't really mean anything because there's no end to this meditation practice. And when we approach it with that kind of intentionality and resolve, then everything that arises becomes part of the curriculum, including what's going on in your household, what's going on in your mind about all of the commitments you had to cancel, what's going on in your mind about your bank account and paychecks or home or family far away that you're not able to be with physically. and everything else that arises in our very, very different lives. So in a sense, this is a certain kind of celebration of our differences, celebration of our unique similarities, and also a recognition of how privileged we are to be able to, in this kind of a crisis moment, even take some time like this to get together in this way and play, explore, adventure, connect. And of course, this is happening all over the internet. The orchestras are rehearsing together and opening up the rehearsals, and rap groups are putting stuff out, and every conceivable form of music and art and everything, people are pouring out onto the internet. Why? Because there is an internet. We have some place to go. If this had happened 40 years ago, we would be far more isolated. And let's not take the internet for granted, because that's a human construct as well. And there are ways that that could actually crash, and then we wouldn't be able to do this. I want to point out, we'd still be just as whole. We'd still be just as beautiful. We'd still be just as powerful. We'd still be just as connected with each other, at least through the heart, at least through our humanity. But the fact that we have this available and that it hasn't crashed yet, in spite of all of the migrating to it, is really something that I think we need to acknowledge is a blessing and a real contribution to, in the end, our getting past this time and being able to heal and recuperate and recover and learn from what we're experiencing on every level, from body to family to work to world, and everything in between, in ways that we will not be so vulnerable to this going forward, because guess what? Pandemics have always happened. Plagues have always visited the world. And very often, now at least we have some kind of understanding of it, and we're all in some sense becoming epidemiologists and public health people simply by watching videos and watching news reports and reading the paper and so forth. And it's all can be part of our mindfulness practice, so that we don't get so sucked into all of that stuff that we, again, fill our minds and get carried away with our thinking and our worst fears. And then there can't be present, say, for each other, for our family, for our children, for our colleagues, for those less fortunate in the world, and basically for this world of ours that has so much potential to flower and flourish and create unimaginable well-being, if we can learn some of the lessons that are learnable from this kind of experience that is basically involving the entire world at this point in time. So I'm going to stop here and invite, excuse me, another aspect of this engagement together, which is asking questions, and I'll try to respond as best I can. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Soren, who will basically allow people or invite people to ask questions, and I'll do my best to understand what you're saying and respond. And for those of you who really all have questions, or let me just say about questions that if you listen deeply to where your own question is coming from, very often you know the answer already, or you can listen to where the answer might reside in your own heart. So although we'll only be able to respond to a very small number of questions, when we inquire deeply, the questions themselves are much more important than our answers or response. And when we listen deeply in that way, that's a profound part of the cultivation of mindfulness. And it sometimes requires dropping underneath thinking to a deeper domain of creativity and wisdom. And that's what awareness is all about. It's not the enemy of thinking. It's simply bigger than thinking and adds a whole dimension to our thoughts and emotions and allows us to modulate them, regulate them, and mitigate the twists and turns, the ups and downs of life in this extremely tumultuous, scary time. So, first question.
Yeah, so if you're new to Zoom, you can click participants, and then there's a way of raising your hand. And John Beshu and I are here, and we can help pick people. If you say your first where you're from, it's really good. We have, let's see, Gabby from Italy. Maybe we will bring her in. Let's see. If you're on video, know that your video will be shown not only to us, but live streamed. So if you're good with that, that's great. If you're watching it through the YouTube, our website, you're not going to have that capacity. So let's see, Gabby from Italy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see you too.
Very good. It's not a her, it's a he.
I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Buonasera.
Nothing wrong with that. Well, first of all, thanks. Thanks, Emilio, for what you're doing, and not only tonight, but what you've done with your life, with your career, and there's a lot of people around the world that is bringing forward the idea and the practice of mindfulness, and it's fantastic, and it's making changes in the life of so many people. So thanks for that. I had a question last time, and I carry with me to this meditation, and it's something around mindfulness and religion, and how people around the world are hanging on to religious beliefs to get through this and other difficult moments in life, and how much that means to them. And I don't know where you have some thoughts about that, and how mindfulness can relate to that, and what's behind these deep needs as human beings that we have.
Well, thank you for that question, Gabby. And first of all, just a deep bow and honoring of you and all of the people of Italy for what you have been through and what you are still going through. And I just want to recognize that our hearts really have been resonating with what's going on with you, just as we can feel your heart's resonating with the lessons that we're now going through, and perhaps didn't learn from what you were going through. So in terms of religion, I won't go into it in very much detail, but the actual root of the meaning means to ligate or to bind together. So that religious impulse is really an impulse to connect with what is unknown and in some sense unknowable by us humans, because our minds are limited in various kinds of ways. At least our thinking minds are limited in various kinds of ways. But when we drop into the heart, then a lot of those limitations disappear and dissolve. And so there is this deep sense of interconnectedness, not just with humans, but with nature, with the universe, with the stars, with the sun, with the sky. And in that sense, we are, in some sense, marvel at the magnificence and the mystery of being alive in this world. And so whatever path one finds congenial, whether one was born into it or learned it through one's parents or through one's church or synagogue or mosque or temple or whatever it is, the most important message is the message of the heart, that the human heart is capable of basically embracing the deep mystery of our interconnectedness. And the mind that knows that it doesn't know can actually be a profound source of intelligence, because then we can see deep connectivity and order within disorder, within chaos. And that allows us to actually learn and grow and heal and transform ourselves across the lifespan. So meditation practice very often is associated with religion, but what the meditation practices in all religions are really pointing to is what the true nature of our humanity as living beings is. And so it doesn't matter what door you enter into this room. The important thing is not to get attached to the doorway or the form of the doorway and think my doorway is nicer than this other doorway or whatever, but to just enter the room. And the room is the room of our own heart and of our profound interconnectedness to nature, to each other, to humans, to the sky, to the sun, to the moon, to the stars, to galaxies, to the gravitational field. There's no end to it. And science and religion are now coming together, and we can actually measure, and it was measured 100 years after Einstein's general theory of relativity. You can actually measure the vibrations in space-time due to colliding black holes, unthinkable numbers of light years away, and enormous numbers of solar masses colliding. So the mind can't deal with that kind of thing in the same way as it can't deal with quantum reality, but we know enough about it to actually be able to not only measure it, but understand that this is pointing to something that is totally awesome about the universe we inhabit, and really should require a sense of wonder and awe at the experience of even a brief life on this planet and what it can offer us when we don't get too involved in harming each other and being driven by fear rather than by love. Thanks for that question.
Thank you.
I see Linda Kane here. Linda, do you want to? You're unmuted, Linda.
Hi, thank you so much for all of this. And I wanted to ask, or if you could maybe speak to finding the balance between paying attention to the news, whether it's what's happening with the virus or what's happening in politics, finding the balance between being informed and yet not contributing to the negativity just by being informed. So I'm a mental health counselor, and I'm a yoga teacher and a yoga student. And
Wonderful.
so my connections with people who are my teachers and who I teach, there are so many different perspectives on whether or not to participate in being informed with the news.
Well, it's a great question, and there's no one answer to it, just the way there's no one way to cultivate mindfulness. And so we all have to, in some sense, find our own comfort zone and also learn from, say, overdoing it. So if we're overdosing on the news can actually kind of infiltrate your heart and your brain to such an extent that you drive yourself crazy. And you can become addicted to knowing all this stuff that's actually gonna not help at all. On the other hand, putting your head in the sand and not paying any attention is probably not a good, long-term solution. The fact is that a lot of us, at least in the United States at this moment, are on a sort of enforced meditation retreat. And so anything that we can use to kind of regulate and modulate input and output can be really placed in the service of cultivating these deep dimensions of the heart and mind and body. Since you're a yoga teacher, there's no separation. I mean, if yoga is not mindful, it's not yoga. I mean, it's like what are you going to do? Yoga on autopilot just for your body? So the awareness is what's absolutely fundamental. And so we can be aware of like what the impulse is. First thing in the morning, you wake up, you check your phone. Do you want to actually eat that kind of diet right away? Or could we actually decide, I'm going to really make this time, this enforced social distancing, a meditation retreat, and I will set the calendar and the schedule for the day, maybe even wake up early and not go for the phone or not go for the newspaper right away, not even go for food right away, and maybe do it even before the kids wake up because it's that important. And you don't even have to get out of bed, but to actually rest in bed in awareness, in the corpse pose. If you know anything about yoga, the hardest pose they say for of all the 84,000 yoga poses, rest in the corpse pose, which requires you to, in some sense, die to the future. That's why it's called the corpse, you're dead. Die to the past, and therefore wake up to the present moment. And if you're still alive in this moment, which you are for now, then to actually cultivate this domain of being awake already, so that when we wake up and we can say, oh yeah, I'm awake, we don't mean, oh yeah, I'm on autopilot already and my feet haven't even gotten out of bed. Why not finish the job and be fully awake? Then get out of bed, sit on your meditation cushion at some other point, or do your yoga. These are the ways to actually not just get through it, but to actually cultivate health in the deepest of ways, not just for yourself, but for anybody who you're living with, your family, friends. You can do yoga together. You can do yoga online together. There are lots of teachers teaching yoga out there every day, many of them for free. I mean, it's actually beautiful, or for just a donation. There's all sorts of beauty that's arising on the web that's actually pointing us towards taking a certain degree of mindful, I don't want to say control, but mindfully, in some sense, asserting ourselves to regulate, like we're tuning a guitar string, how much we want to deal with the information overload. And also, we should ask ourselves, how can I contribute to reducing the suffering, not just in me and myself or my small family group, but the world? And to whatever extent we are capable of that, doing that. And I just want to say that I'm only one of thousands of people out there who are spontaneously offering whatever it is that they have to offer. There are tons of meditation teachers out there doing this, tons of MBSR teachers. And I don't know how many of you tuning in are MBSR teachers, but I do know it's an awful lot. And I just want to say, deep bow to you. This is not about one person putting this out. This is about all of us taking responsibility, because we're all cells of the one body of the planet, of the body politic, of humanity. And this is a lesson that we need to learn. We need to ask ourselves, what is the lesson we need to learn? And then in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, if we're not dead tomorrow or in 3 weeks or whatever, to actually embody those lessons, because the next time around, it may be, not as simple as the way it is this time around, and it isn't simple this time around. But maybe this is a kind of profound wake-up call for the planet, and that will be one of the themes that we will continue to marinate in, if you will, over time as these daily gatherings continue to unfold, if people are still interested in doing this kind of thing after a week or so. Because really it's for life in every sense of that. This is a life sentence but it's also the adventure of a lifetime. So thank you for that question.
Thank you.
And you are in the driver's seat, so you regulate it, and then the world will teach you about the decisions that you make, and then you can modulate, just like with yoga, you modulate and you sort of do whatever is required to navigate through the ups and downs of the yoga sequence and your body and what it's capable of doing, so that every single one of us is in the driver's seat. This is not a catechism that we learn and then follow some leader. This is like each one of us is the leader, and that's really the future of humanity, as far as I can see it, is that kind of embodied wakefulness that requires all hands on deck all the time, each in our own way.
So John, we have about 2 minutes left. Murray, 2 minutes.
How minutes left?
2 minutes.
Okay, 2 minutes.
There was
Okay,
somebody,
let's
Murray
take
from
one
France,
more and then-
about subtitles and translations, so we can work on that. They were wondering about making it available in different languages. Would you like to take one more question, or should we stick with our?
I think we should stop at this point because, you know, again, as I said, if it's only 2 minutes, I think it would be valuable for us to kind of drop in once again. And to just say that I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, and then we'll decide. And so feel free to send in your responses and suggestions to this kind of thing. This is a kind of ongoing experiment in whether we can cultivate a kind of community of wisdom and compassion where everybody's voice and everybody's life and everybody's challenges are part of the conversation and part of the practice. And in that sense, we're all teaching each other constantly. So in the remaining moments of today, and I'll see you here tomorrow if you care to, same time, same station, let's just once again drop back into silence, into a sense of the body as a whole, sitting here breathing. And then letting this awareness that we've cultivated over the past hour just continue to unfold in your life between now and when we see each other again tomorrow. Thank you for attending, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing out there in the world in whatever ways you're doing it, through parenting, through teaching, through medicine, through helping others who need help. And literally, this is a global community that we're cultivating, and I bow to each and every one of you for everything that you're doing out there. I feel deep, deep personal connection with you.
Thanks, and I'll just take everybody off mute so we can say goodbye real quickly. Is that all right?
Okay, in as many languages as possible. That'd be lovely.
Sorry, let me just go back to, I lost my screen here. Sorry, John, are you with us? Can you do that?
I am. I'm here.
Jon Bashu?
Maybe we'll have to do that tomorrow.
Do that next time, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll just say
The
goodbye.
control tab till you see your control bar. Command tab.
Command tab.
Yeah, part of what we're, let me just see. All right, we're back.
Okay.
All right, everybody is unmuted. So you can
I love you.
Grazie.
Ciao a tutti, tanti saluti.
Thank you.
is unmuted.
Ciao, auguri, fate bene. Ognuno di voi e delle vostre famiglie, i vostri cari. Mandi.
Hello, and I love
Andy.
now. Obrigada.
For 3 different reasons.
Jon.
Grazie dall'Italia.
Ciao, domani.
Ana.
Amen.
Diana. Mariana.
Obrigada, até amanhã.
À demain. Mariana. Demain. Au revoir. Merci.
Rubins. Bismarck. Ciao.
Però hanno rimandato un'altra mail.
A demain.
Bimbo,
Gracias.
Será amanhã.